Yesterday, a Chinese lab dropped a coding model that beat Claude on a major leaderboard, costs 40% less, and calls itself open. The headlines wrote themselves. Kimi K3 kills Claude. The open model won. Cancel your subscription. Now read the spec sheet. 2.8 trillion parameters. Trillion with a T. That is not a model you run at home. It's not a model you run on a Mac Studio, on 4 graphics cards, on anything sitting in your house or your office. And open? The weights weren't even out on launch day. Moonshot promised those for July 27th. So the story everyone told, the free local model that dethroned Claude, describes a thing that, on the day it trended, you could neither run locally nor download. So the real question isn't, did Kimi K3 win? It's replace Claude or Codex for whom, and running where, because those two words are hiding two completely different fights. By the end of this, you'll know exactly where K3 genuinely beats Claude, where it quietly doesn't, and why open weight is the most misunderstood phrase in this entire launch. Because it does not mean what you think, and it changes who this model is actually for. Here's the frame. Think of Claude and Codex as the established fine dining restaurant in town. Expensive, consistent, everyone knows the name. Kimi K3 just opened across the street with the same menu at a lower price and a line out the door on opening night. That's a real event. But notice what kind of event it is. It's a new restaurant, a place you eat at, over the internet, paying per visit. It is not a recipe someone handed you to cook in your own kitchen. And when Moonshot says open weight, people hear, here's the recipe, you're free now. Hold that thought, because the recipe turns out to need a kitchen the size of a warehouse. Let's start with what's genuinely, no asterisk, impressive, because it's a lot. K3 is a mixture of experts model, 2.8 trillion parameters total, but only a slice active on any given token, 16 experts out of 896 firing at a time. That's how a model that enormous stays fast enough to serve. It ships with a 1 million token context window, meaning you can pour an entire codebase into it and it holds the whole thing in its head at once. It's natively multimodal. It sees images, not just text. And the price is the part that made finance people flinch. $3 per million input tokens, 15 per million output. Claude Opus 4.8 is 5.25. That's roughly 40% cheaper for work in the same weight class. And there's a cash trick. If your input's been seen before, input drops to 30 cents a million. 90% off the part of your bill that, for coding agents rereading the same files all day, is most of the bill. And it's not vaporware quality. Moonshot says K3 took the #1 spot on Code Arena, a head-to-head coding leaderboard ahead of Claude Fable 5. If that holds up, it's the first open-weight model to genuinely crack the frontier's top tier on coding. That's a real milestone. 2 years ago, the gap between the best Chinese open model and the best American closed one was a chasm. Yesterday, it was a leaderboard position. So, did it win? Here's the turn, and this is where you have to read past the press release. That #1 Code Arena result is Moonshot's own claim on the benchmark Moonshot chose to lead with. Look at the boards. Moonshot didn't run the launch on, and the picture cools. On the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, an independent aggregate, K3 scores 57.1, behind Claude at 59.9. On Deep SWE, a coding agent benchmark, GPT 5.6 leads at 73, Fable 5 follows at 70, and K3 sits a step back at 67.5. That's not a loss. It's close, genuinely close, frontier adjacent. But #1 beats Claude, and a couple points behind the leaders on the independent boards are 2 different sentences, and the launch day headline only quoted the first one. Every lab cherry picks the benchmark it wins. When a model leads the chart, its own maker published, and trails the charts other people publish, the honest read is excellent, competitive, not king. Credit where it's due. A step behind the frontier while costing 40% less is a fantastic deal, just not a coronation. And now the trap that reframes the whole thing, the open one. When people ask, can a local model replace Claude? They mean, can I run this on my own hardware, cut the cord, keep my code private, stop paying forever? That is the entire dream of local AI. And K3, at 2.8 trillion parameters, does not serve that dream at all. Even when the weights drop on the 27th, even fully open. The hardware to run this thing is a rack of data center accelerators worth more than a car. Open weight means the recipe is public. It does not mean you own a kitchen that can cook it. For the individual developer picturing a private model humming on the desk, K3 is not that. It never was. It's a frontier cloud model that happens to be cheaper and happens to be Chinese. You're still eating at the restaurant, just a cheaper one, still sending your code across the internet to somebody else's servers. So who is open actually for? Companies. A business that can stand up its own serving infrastructure can take those open weights, run K3 inside its own walls, and get frontierish coding with its source code never leaving the building. That's a real, valuable thing. It's just corporate infrastructure, not a cord-cutting story for you and your laptop. The word open did a lot of quiet work in those headlines, and it pointed almost everyone at the wrong door. And everybody in this is selling. Moonshot leads with the benchmark it wins and the word open, because both make the loudest headline. A Beijing lab rattling American AI valuations is the story it wants. The Doom accounts want Claude dead because collapse trends harder than solid new competitor. The Claude and Codex loyalists will wave away a real 40% price cut because switching is annoying. I've got a subscribe button and nothing else to move, so let me just tell you what to actually do with this. If you're an individual or a small team using a coding assistant through an API, K3 is worth a real look right now, today, through Moonshot's API. Not because it dethroned anyone, but because it's frontier adjacent at 40% less. And that cash discount is brutal in your favor for agent work that rereads the same files all day. Run your actual hardest tickets through it for a week. If the quality gap you feel is smaller than the price gap you're paying, switch or route the easy work to K3 and keep a Claude or Codex key for the cliff. That's the move that always wins in this channel. Match the tool to the task, don't marry a brand. If you're a company with real infrastructure and real reasons, your code can't leave the building, mark the 27th on your calendar. Open Frontier class weights you can self-host is the genuinely big deal in this launch, and it's the one the consumer headlines mostly missed. And if you're the person who wanted a model on your own desk that replaces your Claude subscription, this isn't it, and no 2.8 trillion parameter model ever will be. That dream lives with the models small enough to fit your machine, and this is the opposite end of the scale. Don't buy hardware chasing this headline. So can Kimi K3 replace Claude or Codex? For your API bill, yes, plausibly and cheaper, starting now. For your dream of a private model living in your own kitchen, no. And the word open tricked a lot of people into thinking otherwise. The restaurant across the street is real. It's good, and it's cheaper. It's still a restaurant. Nobody handed you a kitchen. The best day one question about any model that beats Claude isn't how high it scored. It's where it runs, whose benchmark said so, and what the word open is quietly hiding. Ask those three yesterday, and the headline falls apart in your hands. See you in the next one.